Hey everybody, you got David Abrams here. I got today an amazing guest, someone I'm really excited about. Honestly, I reached out to him hopefully to get him on the show about 6 months ago. So today I'm really excited to finally bring you on, get to kind of pick your brain a little bit, learn about your journey into SaaS, into software. You have an amazing journey, and you've learned a lot along the way, especially in bootstrap startups. And you have a really big background, a really big experience level here, and I would love to dig into that today. But today we have Rob on. Rob, I would love for you to kind of just jump right in, kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey,
Yeah,
man,
for
from the
sure.
very beginning. I
Yeah,
would
so
love to
I'm
know how
sitting
you got
today
here,
in the Lead
to
Pages
know where
office
knowing where you're
in
sitting right
downtown
now. I
Minneapolis,
would love to
and
know kind of how that
that's what you're
even got
referring to.
started.
Yeah, my journey has taken a turn after an acquisition of the startup I launched with the co-founder in 2013. To go back to the early days, I started writing code when I was a kid, and then like an 8-year-old, right? Got an Apple IIe in the early 80s, and started writing professionally, getting paid for it in the late 90s during the dot-com boom, and loved writing code until 3, 4, 5 years into it, I realized, boy, I'm building stuff for other people, but I'm not building any equity for myself. And I had kind of stopped loving being told what to build and really wanted to build products of my own. And so in the early 2000s, made that transition. I thought that, frankly, making the transition to consulting would be it, because I was like, man, then I won't have a boss and I'll be working for myself. But it turns out that didn't do it for me either. So eventually. Mhm.
When you were doing consulting, because a lot of people I feel like get started either doing services or consulting, was that kind of a
Yeah,
good
it
crutch
it
to get you
turned
started and
out
bring some
it
money
did
in,
give me
or
more
did you
freedom,
just
right? Well,
not like that? You
I
were
look at
actually like
freedom as on
reporting
three
back to
axes. There's
the
time, there's
management teams and
income,
stuff
and
like
there's
that.
mobility. And consulting gave me a lot of income flexibility because I could work more and make a lot because I was charging per hour. I was also charging more per hour than I was making as a salaried employee. And the mobility aspect, I basically moved. I was remote, so I could move all over. I thought it would give me more time mobility that I could kind of, or time independence. But it turns out that for the higher paying gigs that I wanted to do, $100, 150 an hour, people really did want me on 9 to 5 every day, and that was. It's not the end of the world, but it wasn't what I was looking for. I was genuinely looking to like work less for a few years and just kind of also build equity. And so it turned out to be a great stepping stone, and it allowed me to bank some money, and that money allowed me to then kind of bootstrap my own apps.
Hmm. That's awesome. Do you think that's
Yeah, I mean,
like when you're getting
you see
started with
people do
software?
it
Do you think
without
you
it.
kind of need that
I think it
padding if
depends
you're
on
going to
what
go
you
the
want to launch.
bootstrap
If you're going
route?
to
Like,
be
do you
so
need to have
ambitious
either
as to
some
launch a
income
SaaS
coming in or
app
some
these
type of
days,
financial
you're going
backing
to
in?
need some type of competitive advantage, right? Or else the slog is just too long because it's so competitive in every space, as you guys know. And I launched Drip into the email marketing and marketing automation space, which is equally as competitive, if not more. But I had a bunch of stuff that a bunch of assets that I had brought with me, money, experience, a network, an audience, all this stuff. I would never have launched into email marketing if I was just kind of Joe off the street.
Mhm. That
Mm-hmm.
makes a lot of sense. And I kind of want to I want to go back to your story and your journey in just a second here, but something kind of key there that you kind of just ran over fast is the
I
audience aspect.
don't. I
Do you
think
think
there are
if you're
four
doing
competitive
SaaS
advantages
today,
that you can
that you
have in
have to
SaaS.
have the
And if you have
audience
any one of
built,
them, you
or
can
it's like a key
grow
part of
quicker
what you're
than
doing in
most.
SaaS?
The first one is being early. And so you look at companies like Baremetrics, which was the first Stripe, one-click Stripe analytics. You look at Balsamic. They were, Peldy got it. He was a really early mock-up tool, right? Now you have InVision and such, but Peldy got out way ahead and is doing several million a year. So that was the first one, being early. The second one is having an amazing network yourself, not an audience, but a network. Like, it's who you know, basically. And so you can look at, maybe Noah Kagan when he first started AppSumo and SumoMe. He didn't have an audience, but he knew a ton of people. Like, he knew Tim Ferriss. He got acquainted with me. He knew a bunch of people in the startup space. Sean Ellis was similar. Like, he didn't have a an audience, but he knows what he's doing. The third one is an audience, right? Having people who will, either a podcast or a blog or some type of recurring audience. And you can look at, like, I leveraged that for Drip. Trying to think of who else. Oh, Laura Roeder, when she launched Edgar, leveraged that. So those are examples of that. And then the last one is, this one's is a little bit hard to explain, but it's basically having like extensive growth experience, like knowledge of how to hack growth. And this is one that's not, it's really hard to find. You can't hire, like, the best people, you can't hire them. But if you look at, a Noah Kagan, a Heaton Shah, a Neil Patel, a Sean Ellis, these people who are really like 10x, even Sujan Patel, like the people who are 5 or 10x, that's a competitive advantage as well. Everything else, good design, a great product, all that, not a competitive advantage, because that's table stakes at this point for launching into SaaS. So that's my kind of take on that. Yeah.
Wow. That's really fantastic to hear. That's actually really, really unique kind of an explanation there as far as the competitive advantages. I think so many people do look at products still as, early SaaS, which in B2B right now, we're kind of in mid SaaS here right now with so much competition, but that's absolutely fantastic advice. So, all right, so I'm gonna take a step back. I want to go back
this
into your
is
journey.
around 2000.
We just got through,
so around
creating kind of your
2005,
first
I was
apps.
really getting fed up with
Where are you now?
consulting, and I said,
what are you
I've
doing
launched
now
a
that you're
couple
kind of getting out of
dumb
consulting?
startup ideas that I read about in Wired magazine or Business 2.0 or whatever, and I was always going after the big funded thing. I didn't think you could launch a startup or a software company without raising money, because no one was doing it or talking about it. And so finally, I was launching a couple things, and I came across an app called .NET Invoice, and it was downloadable. It was web-based, but it was downloadable. You downloaded the source code, and it was selling for $100. And these guys had it in alpha, and so it wasn't even released. It was super buggy, and they basically were like, "We need marketing help." And I had just enough marketing knowledge that I figured, I don't really want to work with these guys because I don't know them, but I wonder if they'll just sell me the whole app, because they had a launch list and stuff. And so I bought it from them, and it was scary. I basically pulled almost all the money I had in the bank, the business bank account, which is about $11,000, and I bought this thing that was kind of pre-revenue. And these days I would never do that, but at the time it was about 400 hours worth of work to build the app, and I was billing 100, 125 an hour, and I thought to myself, this app is worth 40 or 50 grand, so I'm getting a deal. But that's not how you should price things, as we know. It should all be based on revenue these days. So that was the first one. So I spent that money. I got it up. It was only doing a couple $100 a month. A month after I got it, I eventually built it up to doing about 2 or 3 grand a month. And I suddenly realized, wait, I don't actually need to do this bootstrap. I'm sorry, I don't need to raise funding, because I was pitching angels at the time. We were in New Haven, Connecticut, and I was talking to MBA students at Yale, and I was teamed up with 2 MBA. Yeah, just crazy stuff, right? But I thought that's how you had to do it. So this is 2006, 2007. And I realized, why don't I just do 2 more .NET Invoices, and maybe 3? It's like, I'm going to make way less money than I was consulting, but I only needed 8 or 9 grand to live on. I was married, I had a kid. It just wasn't that expensive. Yep. Yep. Yeah, because .NET Invoice it was a one-time sale, and it was in this tiny little niche where you really had to kind of be a .NET developer or consultant to want to use it, which was good, though. It insulated me from like the FreshBooks and the whoever else does the invoicing stuff these days. So it was a very consistent revenue stream, but I couldn't grow it. I kept trying to push it and grow it, but the niche was just so small. So I said, why don't I do a couple more of these? And so that's what I did. So I either built or acquired about 3 or 4 more of those little kind of 2 to, let's just say 1 to 5K, things, until I built up a revenue stream of about 10K a month. And then the day I stopped consulting was like one of the best days of my life. I loved it. It was a big deal. Yeah. I woke up in the morning, I was making more money consulting, but it was the freedom aspect, and I woke up on a Monday and I was like, I don't have to do anything. And these things make money while I sleep. This is like the internet dream. And I went to Barnes and Noble, and I had a cup of coffee, and I read some books. I was like, this is it. I want the rest of my life to be like this. And then I screwed up and I started SaaS Apps, which is the opposite of what you should do if you want freedom.
Awesome. So with right. Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, basically, you felt that consulting was creating almost a job for you. You were kind of creating your own job for yourself, which probably had long hours, all the excess stuff that comes with consulting that we know about. But so when you did these
I
SaaS
had a
apps,
team
you're
of
like, okay, I have
contractors.
revenue
This is
coming in, but who was doing the support
none
at
of
this
these were
time? Who was doing
recurring.
the
None of them were
marketing and lead
SaaS. It
gen?
was
Like, how were
all
those apps kind of
downloadable
sustained?
or
Was that still
one-time
you, or did you
sales.
have a
And the
team behind
advantage
it?
of that is that support is substantially less. You don't have to keep a service up. So I had like one or two virtual assistants doing email support.
Got it.
All the lead gen was automated in the sense of it was either organic, it was SEO, there were some paid ads to maintain. I learned display ads. One of them was, I'm trying to think of I learned these skills as I went along, right? In 2005, all I knew was some basic SEO. By the time it came to 2010, 2011, when I did get into SaaS, I had this whole tool belt of I knew how to do social, I knew how to build an audience, I knew how to do email marketing, I knew how to do SEO, I knew how to do paid acquisition. I had done it, each of those for at least one of my products. And that was why I was able to then hit the ground running when I did get into SaaS. So at the time, yeah, I was literally working for about 10 months. We had our second child. I worked 12 hours a week for 10 months. And I made, my full-time income that I needed. It was let's say it was about 120K, give or take. And that was half what I was making consulting, but I didn't care. It was like the best 10 months, a good stretch of 10 months. But then at the end, of course, you get bored. And, like founders, we're ambitious, right? And we want to do the next thing and we want to learn and level up. And so that's where it took me in 2010, 2011.
Yeah, I love that level up term 100%. I feel like at some
Yep.
level, we're also kind of addicted to challenge a little bit. When things kind of get to a plateau level, we look for the next challenge to take on, even if it's like adding another 20 hours of work to our week. But let me ask you this question back about these on the different traffic strategies and stuff like that you were using with these individual apps. How did you know, or were you just plain testing, throwing stuff against the wall?
Each niche was different. Of course, I tried to do SEO for all of them because that was a low-hanging fruit, and it was where I started. And so it was something that it was kind of the first marketing approach I learned. Plus, if you get it going, it's such a nice flywheel, right? And so one by one, and I just SEO'd all of them, and some of them took and some didn't, right? So some went to page one or even top two rankings. I mean, I had a site that ranked number 4 for the term beach towels. So it got thousands a month. It was an e-commerce site, and I was drop shipping beach towels. I later sold that because e-commerce is kind of a pain in the butt. Physical products, not my thing. But getting that to work for each of these was a nice flywheel. Then, depending on which one had the highest profit margin and was growing well, then I would say, all right, this week I'm going to try to do Google AdWords, or Facebook ads as they came out for this one and see what happens. And I give it a try for a couple of weeks, and if it worked, put that into autopilot, and if it didn't, I would move on. So that's where e-commerce was tough. Go ahead.
Were you putting like were you putting like KPIs around like the marketing? So like if you knew 2 weeks, what was like kind of your goal line? Because one of the questions I always like to ask people is like, when do you know that the marketing channel isn't going to work versus
if I try like
how you're
paid
doing that
acquisition,
marketing channel, or
if I try it,
just not going
and
to work?
I have I'm within 3x of where I want to be in terms of the price to acquire, then I figure I can probably optimize into it. But if I'm 10x, it's a little too far. So that's kind of my loose, especially as a bootstrapper. I mean, let's be honest. If I had funding, you can be a little more flippant with your cash. But I was being very conservative with it. I also, I look at about if you're bootstrapped, probably a 2 to 4 month payback window, right? So whatever you're spending on the ad, you want to get back in 2 to 4 months. I started, as I got more and more money in the bank, I started pushing that out to 5 and 6 months. If you're funded, you can tend to go 12 months before you can get paid back. But those are kind of the ranges.
Okay. When you're first starting out, especially in SaaS, and you don't really have like a good idea of LTV or your churn percentages, how do you guys kind of calculate that or know when a 3 or 4 month payback period is
early
even
stage?
if your
I would
churn's
look
only
at
going to be 3 months?
my pricing grid,
is there really,
and I would pick.
you
You tend to have 3 or 4 plans. I would pick the one not the cheapest one, but the one next to that. And I would use that as my average revenue per user. I mean, this is ballpark, but that's how I do it, right? So if you have a 10, 20, 40, $80 plan, I'd pick the 20. I'd say that's the ARPU I'm shooting for. And then I'm assuming that if I built a service that anybody wants, that they're gonna stick around six to 12 months at the start. Once you have product market fit, you're looking at 2+ years of lifetime. But even in the early days, I mean, you can get people to stick around. So if you're getting paid back in 3 or 4 months, even with high churn, you can break even, And then within even the first few months of having, I mean, once you get to 100 customers, you can start seeing patterns. And at 200 or 300, which you should be able to get to in the first six to 12 months, you really start having some decent numbers, and then you adjust that and you realize how off your estimates were.
Yeah, isn't it funny how we see that, the estimate values? And I want to apologize for everyone. I got a new puppy here, so the dogs are going to be barking a little bit on and off today. But yeah, that totally makes sense. So I appreciate that. But let me kind of circle back. So we have the small one-off apps that you have right now. You're about to level up to the next level, go into SaaS, go into recurring SaaS. Where do you go? How did you get started here? Why did you choose the challenge?
The one-time sales model. It's just so hard to build, because you start the first of each month with $0 in revenue that month, and it's just painful. Even with SEO and all the flywheel stuff, it was like I want to build an app to 10K, 20K a month. How do you do that? It's so time intensive. The other thing was, I was super happy doing what I was doing, and I actually this was my most prolific creative period. During maybe less than 2 year span, I launched MicroConf, which is the biggest conference for self-funded startups. I wrote a book and a half. Actually, I later published a second. I did a bunch of public speaking. I launched Founder Cafe, which is a membership site for us, and started the podcast, Started for the Rest of Us, which is still going today. So that was in like an 18-month period, and it was because I had all this time. Yeah, I had bought my time, right? And I could have spent that building other things, but I was, creating, which was a lot of fun. Then I asked my wife, I said, making a decent living. We're living in Central Valley, California. It's fairly cheap. I was like, what would we do if we had, if I made 2 or 3 times what I make right now? I don't know. We don't need that, right? And she was like, we could be more generous. We could travel more. We could get an apartment on the coast. We could help people. We could, she came up with all these things, and I was like, that actually sounds pretty fun. Let's do it. So then I made this goal of like, I want to A, make more money, and B, I want it to be more consistent, because that one-time stuff would go up and down during during 2008, during the financial crisis. Like, one of my apps lost 80% of its revenue over the course of a few months. And it's tough, right? When you're supporting a family. So it was the recurring. It was also the fact that I could probably just make more money. And then it was the next challenge, right? It was to kind of tell myself, or, prove to myself, can I actually do this? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think I also like the fact that you asked your wife. I think sometimes we just as people become a little bit complacent in our position. Like, it's probably easy for you just to say, hey, let's stay complacent with my apps are doing okay. Even one that lost 80%, we could do another one. But that kind of level up in mentality is a big thing to do. It's hard to do for people because you have to grow your
so knowing that I wanted to launch a SaaS app, but I didn't want to build a SaaS app, because
so you're about to jump into it. Where do you go?
And I'd already acquired. I'd built and launched, and I'd acquired. I'd done both. The acquiring was always so much more fun, because you jump ahead to product market fit, right? You don't have to do that 18-month slog of building it, launching it, getting interest, figuring out, have you built something people want, realizing you haven't. It's hard. It's 12 to 18 months, as you know. You're in the midst of it, or hopefully getting past it at this point. So I looked to acquire a small, and again, I wasn't independently wealthy. I mean, I had like 30 grand in the bank that, maybe 40 grand by this time, that I had just put in the bank from all these small apps. It was just extra money I had earned here and there. And so I went on the lookout to try to acquire SAS Apps. And this is before, there's some good brokers out there now, but this is before all of that. So it was kind of the Wild West. And so I went to forums. I was combing through like old lists of like, the most popular apps that launched in 2009 and 2008 and 2007. I would go back and Google them, and then I would go to those sites and I would try to see, man, is this thing, old and out of date? And if it was, I would email the owner, and I would say, hey, are you interested in selling? And so that's eventually what happened. I sent an email to the owner of hittail.com, which was a long tail SEO keyword tool. and it was in disrepair, I'll say to say the least, and it was doing about 20 grand a year in revenue. But at its peak, it had done 40 or 50. But the number of inbound links this thing had, and just the pure route to optimizing it was obvious. The pricing was screwed up. The site looked old. No split testing had been done. The headline was terrible. Just all the stuff that I figured, I have enough skill. I can just hack my way through it and fix bugs. Oh, it was also going down twice a month. It would just have this 2-day outage. It was all the things. And this, it was on servers, physical servers in a cage in New York. So it was $1,100 a month in hosting, right? So it was like break even. I mean, it was doing 20 grand a year, but it was like not making zero profit. So we negotiated a sale. So I bought it for $30,000 in 2011. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Terrifying.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Well, that's amazing. Well, I'm sure and I'll ask this in a second here, but I'm sure that was a little bit of a frightening moment, since it sounds like that was kind of like all your savings. Yeah. The other one is, like, do you think that being a developer is kind of a unique advantage for you when you go into these selling opportunities? Because you can do some of the technical due diligence yourself. I think one of the scary things for people buying applications is like, what is this built on? How do I know the technology is good? Being kind of just in that position, you've already done this. How would you kind of?
Yeah, it was. I got to look at some of the code. It was in classic ASP, which even in 2011 was a decade past its prime. It was terrible. But I knew it. I had written it in 2000, 2001, so I knew I could get back up to speed. It definitely was a competitive advantage to being a developer, just because I knew that I could fix the stuff and go through it. I mean, I spent 60 hours a week. I went from working 10 hours a week to working 60 hours a week for about 4 to 6 weeks. I was just constantly fixing, combing, optimizing, doing all that. These days I would hire a developer who was an expert in that thing and pay him $150 an hour for 5 hours of due diligence or something, just to look through the code and give me opinions and do a write-up and that kind of thing. Yeah, there were.
Perfect.
I probably sent 30 or 40.
So you find this one. How many
over the course of several months.
I mean,
and
lots of different apps,
Hittail was owned by a PR. It had been owned by a PR firm that kind of went bust, and the owner of that PR firm was non-technical and was kind of just like, I don't really know what to do with this thing. I don't want to shut it down. It has potential, and she was just looking to get something out of it. So it was a distress sale, which worked out well for me because I didn't have enough money to pay for a high-end app. But it was good. So I put a new coat of paint on it, did a redesign, changed the pricing completely, moved it. Did we move it to Stripe? Yeah, it was on PayPal subscription, just all the stuff. And so wound up growing it over the course of about 18 to 24 months. I built it up to about 300K in ARR. And it was just me, it was me and 2 contractors. So it was a that was a life-changing event, right? Because I went, and I still had the other apps at the time, so I went from kind of making what I needed to live to suddenly like, wow, this is highly, highly profitable. And I'm glad that, I did this. And so we were able to go do the stuff we talked about. We were very generous with our money, and, and we got an apartment on the coast and did all the stuff that we wanted to.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. I mean, obviously, when you take those risks as entrepreneurs, there's always the route of, hey, listen, it goes bunk, the ASP can't be repaired, and you lose the bet. But at least you would have had the knowledge of what you had learned from it. And let me ask you, for this app, you took all these different
SEO was one of them.
Marketing channels.
Yeah, no, so I actually did a full talk on my microconf
kind of
about this. That if you're really interested, I'll go run through them quickly here. But I basically went through this entire story, and then I went month by month of exactly the marketing tactics I used and which ones worked. Nice. And it's called How to 10x in 18 months, I think. How I 10x'd in 15 months, something like that. If you go to Vimeo and search for microconf, you'll find it. But basically, SEO was a big part of it. Facebook ads was a big part of it. My audience was not a big part of it. I had probably mailing list 25,000. That gave me a little bit of MRR, but it was not substantial, maybe 5 or 10%. Yeah, podcast, book, blog, mailing list. What else did I do? Oh, I went on a podcast tour. Yeah, this is when I coined that term, podcast tour. I just went to any podcast that I felt like could have some type of relevance. And again, this is 2011, 2012. So like podcasts are still kind of, on the outskirts. And I worked my network to basically email all these podcasts or get intros or whatever. Went on Mixergy and went on, a bunch of SEO podcasts, and different ones resonated and different ones didn't. Did content marketing. So I hired a small agency to write a bunch of posts, did guest posts, kind of did the gamut of what you would expect. And this was, again, since it was 2011, 2012, some of them were still kind of greenfield, whereas today there are always ways to do it, but it just gets more competitive as time goes on. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very much so. Very much so. Let me ask. So, I just had a great question that just totally slipped my mind, but it was about the marketing channel. I'm going to circle back to it in just a second here. So you guys are well. Actually, here it is. I remembered it now. So it's about your network. So you said you worked your network. How did you build it? So during this time, you had the Oneoff products.
My one piece of advice is start doing things in public as early as you can. And by doing things in public, I mean write a blog, write a book, start a meetup, start an event, publish stuff somewhere. And so I built my network. I started my blog in 2005, softwarebyrob.com. So I'm 12 years into it now. But by that time, I was 5 or 6 years into it. So I had a mailing list of whatever it was, 10,000 people at the time. And people just kind of read my stuff. Like Jason Cohen stumbled upon my blog, Jeff Atwood from Coding Horror, Peldy, from Balsamic. And I remember when I put my book on sale, I wrote a book. It's called Start Small, Stay Small. And all these names were coming in that I didn't recognize. And then I would see people like Peldy Golzoni just bought my book. Jason Cohen, is that the same guy? And I was like, wow, people are following me. This is crazy. And it was just because I shipped, right? I shipped 1 or 2 blog posts a week for 5 years. Awesome. And it just happens. You show up every day and that happens. Then I started MicroConf, which upped my network. Then I started the podcast, which upped my, each of these things just makes you, so when people say your name, they're like, oh yeah, I know that guy. Even if they don't follow you, they're like, yeah, that guy's legit, or if that person emails me, I will get a response, I can, you kind of name anybody now and I can get a response from them just because I've been around doing it. And so by 2011, 2012, it was a much smaller network than I have now, but it was indeed a network. And that was something I undervalued. I thought I could do it all on my own, to be honest. And I realized that the biggest leaps that I've made in my career have been when I've relied on other people.
That's fantastic advice. And that's really amazing to hear, especially the advice on just kind of getting out there and doing what you can to be in the public eye. I think perceived value comes a lot. We talk about this all the time in Demio with webinars. Webinars give you great perceived value, being live on a webinar, but so does being on a podcast and having a guest post on someone else's blog. You become the expert. You get so much borrowed credibility. And I think events are freaking fantastic. Being on stage or having your own event, even if you run the event and you have amazing speakers lined up, you get all that borrowed credibility from people on stage. So it's a really powerful way. I love you for that. And I think we got to do a better job of that probably internally here. But very cool. So you guys got Hittail running at $300K a month. Where do you guys go?
Well, there were two things. One, it kind of got boring. So Hittail was a higher churn app. So I looked out and I thought, I don't know, without completely almost building a second product on, I don't know that I'm going to get much further than 40, 50K MRR. It's just going to plateau because of the churn, and I couldn't get around it, which, 25 to 30K MRR was just fine for me. But I realized I don't want to do that. Am I going to do this in 10 years? I'm not the kind of guy to sit there and just sit on an app for that long. I want new challenges. The second thing was Google kept accidentally almost putting it out of business every 6 months. Remember Panda and Penguin, remember not provided, where they suddenly stopped providing keywords, all of these things, each of them just decimated Hittail. And I was like, you know what? I'm kind of paying my bills now with this thing. I don't want to be put out of business overnight. So I was looking at the next step of how can I level up? How can I do something 10x was where I'd come, right? So I'd come from these small little apps, and then I'd say, I want to do something 10x bigger, which was Hittail, right? And then it was how can I do something 10x bigger than Hittail and without funding? And so I was trying to come up with ideas that I thought, were big enough to do that. And it turns out, of course, every app that I had built, launched, or acquired, I had used email marketing to great effectiveness, right? It was always a 20, 30, 40% level up for me. And so we had built manually a little widget, little toaster widget that, was in the lower right of the Hittail website. You can still see it if you go to hittail.com. And it was JavaScript popped up and it collected emails, and then it put them into MailChimp autoresponder. And it was so freaking painful to build that. There was no opt-in monster. There was no SumoMe. There were none of these things that are out today. And so we took a week to build it, which is dumb. It's insane that an engineer would have to do that. And suddenly realized, like, why don't we just make this a SaaS? Just the widget and the autoresponder. And so that was when we were like, all right, and let's call it Drip. And 6 months later, we launched and totally did not have product market fit.
Mm-hmm.
A few. It was a few asked about it, and
well,
we would point to this open source library.
People asking about that widget on your
before
site?
We were a line of
just
code.
Like randomly
this is when Derek
cool,
at the time, who's my co-founder with Drip, he was a contractor on Hittail, and he was just he was like writing marketing copy, and he was writing some ASP and all this stuff. And I said, man, you're really sharp. He was working half time for me. I said, do you want to take your other half time and spin this off into a SaaS app? And he's a Rails developer, and he's like, yeah, sure. So, and he was a contractor and then a W2 employee of Drip, and kind of became my co-founder later on. It was a retroactive thing, right? He had been there since the beginning, so it made sense. We didn't get a ton of interest, but I did kind of email out into my network again. So I emailed, Wade from Zapier. I emailed Jeff from Ambassador, Ruben with BidSketch, just kind of a bunch of SaaS founders. And I said, would you pay for this? Would you pay $50 a month to kind of have this just done for you? And they were like, yes, we would totally do it. So I got 11 people committed to paying me between $50 and $99 a month. And that's when we broke ground on code. And then we launched. I had an email list that I kind of built up using the same marketing approaches I had used with Hittail, but I was just sending them to a landing page. So I had about 3,500 people on a list when we launched Drip. We emailed everybody, and we got up first month after launch. We were at like 8K MRR, which is a great place to be. And then we just plateaued for like 6 months, just no product market fit. It was tough, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Those.
What do you think was
Whoever, MailChimp, Infusionsoft,
the
kind of the big players.
But
we just weren't differentiated enough
what was really
from
around
MailChimp.
that?
As people got in and used Drip, they were
Just
saying,
some of the basic ones?
this is 2013, right? And they were saying, you make it easy, but like now that I've wired it up, I could just spend a couple days and go do this, and then I don't have to pay you. And I don't like that it doesn't sync with MailChimp. I need you to send broadcast emails. I want a mobile app. I want, they wanted all this stuff. I want reporting. And so we just kept struggling, like, what is the thing we're going to build that is going to get us over that hump? And over this course, 4 or 5 months, we went from 8K to 10K, and I was like marketing the hell out of it. So I was very frustrated because I should know how to do this by now, right? I've been doing this successfully for 6-7 years. And eventually the knowledgeable folks whom I trusted, who are good product people, like, Brennan Dunn and Ruben and a guy named Drew Sanaki, they kept saying, there are these apps up market, Infusionsoft, Entreport, Marketo, Pardot, and they have this thing called automation. And it's like, it's a way for you to like move people in and out of lists, and it's to tag them with this thing, and then to get them into this different campaign, and to have, lead scoring and just all these concepts. And I was like, I've never even heard of this. This sounds way too complicated. But the further I dug in, it was like, boy, tools with automation are expensive and they're hard to use. Could we know how to build software, and we're really good at UX. Could we just build it a lot simpler and make it $50 or $100 a month? Will that work? And that was the hypothesis. So we started building that out over the next few months.
That's awesome. Sounds like Demio. But that's really cool. So in your head, though, didn't you, like you said before that, or maybe this is because the market was earlier. I thought simplicity was a big enough.
Before that, I thought simplicity, ease of use, and just ease of getting set up.
Be the differentiator.
Yeah. Oh, well, once the automation, pre-automation, that's what I thought, and it turns out not to be. The automation, the differentiator there was
and the automation.
It just setting up any type of automation in any tool was really hard. And complicated, and $300 a month and up. So it was pretty easy value prop to say, we have 80% of the automation that Infusionsoft does. Again, this is back nowadays. We are feature parity, with them plus. But at the time, it's like, we do 70 or 80%, but it's only $50 or $100, and that was a pretty easy app. Plus, the UX thing did make a difference. Yeah. Totally.
It does. It absolutely makes such a big difference, especially for those type of apps, because there's a lot of overwhelm in that type of technology. Yep. Same with webinars.
Absolutely,
but like that overwhelm is a real thing for
It
users.
was literally the
so
number of
was there kind of an instant
the website
break of the
traffic
plateau as
over
soon as
the
you kind of
course
did a
of
feature announcement?
4 or 5 months because I stopped marketing as we were circling back. I didn't want to spend dollars to just have people churn out. So the number of trials were going down, the website traffic was going down. And as soon as we started launching automation, you can see this tick in revenue go up even as the trial numbers go down, because people were sticking around. And so, we started growing by $2,000 a month and then $5,000 a month. And then we later launched workflows a year later, which was the visual extension of that. It's a way to visually build automations. We were going fast. We were into 7 figures by the time we were acquired in 2016. Thank you.
Well, congratulations on being acquired. That's amazing, and congratulations on that growth. One question I think I kind of have, because it's such a hard question. When you have so many people asking, it sounds like early on in that plateau stage, you had a lot of people asking for all of these different features, all the things that they wanted. How do you guys kind of organize all that, prioritize? But it sounds like what really was the key thing wasn't what they were asking for. It sounds like what the key thing was kind of an out of the box. What do people really want?
It's hard because
process.
So in early early products, the problem you're going to have is people are going to say, "That's a nice product, but it's too expensive.
And you talked
it's too expensive for what it does." Oh, if you just lowered your price, you're going to hear that. My advice is do not lower the price. Build a product that is worth the price you're charging. It's called I call it aspirational pricing, right? My product aspires to be worth $50 a month is what we were charging. And people were like, MailChimp's only $15. If you made it that, maybe I'd do it. But it was like, I don't want to build an app that's $15 a month. The churn is too high. It's too hard to grow to 7 or 8 figures, So we had totally. So we got hundreds of incoming, and then I was outbound emailing all the people who were canceling and who were using the product and just trying to have conversations. And it was kind of a sea of mishmash of like, you should build a mobile app and be like, MailChimp, and you should do this and that. But the reason we decided on automation is because we didn't want to compete in a low price space, and all the other stuff was stuff that MailChimp and Aweber already did, right? People were trying to get us to feature parity with MailChimp and Aweber. And as soon as we had feature requests that were like, put us on feature parity with a $300 a month product, it suddenly was like, that's kind of easy, right? That's a simple value prop that I think that we can use to sell it. So that was a big part of it. We also, we felt like when I looked out, I felt like marketing automation was the future of email marketing. That's where everyone would move eventually. Even simple marketing automation, even if you're not doing extensive stuff, it's just we're moving from a world of one to many to one to few messaging, and that's essentially what marketing automation allows you to do. So it was kind of a bet on that being the future. It was, and also being like, I'm willing to play in a more expensive space. The crappy part is I kind of wanted to build a real lifestyle business that we didn't have to spend much time on, and could be kind of on autopilot like HitTail, and that marketing automation is not that space at all. And so we moved into a just red water. So it suddenly became, a 50-hour a week job, which was the right choice in retrospect, but it was a tough choice. It took us months to decide to do it because we were like, do we really want to do this? Do we really want to complicate our lives?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, we definitely understand. I think at Demio, we kind of have the same thing where it's like, you have the automation and there's a lot of requests, and it's not you have to make that distinction early on. Am I doing a lifestyle business, which is totally different type of SaaS, versus are we building kind of, and I hate to say it this way, but like a real company, in the fact that it's going to be a lot of upfront heavy lifting until you can kind of hit the scaling points of bringing in the team and the revenue is high enough. But that's awesome. I'm glad you guys made that challenge.
Your integration's awesome. We hear a lot of positive things about it. It's one of the best
we
I've seen.
recommend people to you guys all the time here, and we have a really amazing integration with you guys that we love. It's one of our favorite. Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, we just kind of have a really good vision on how it should kind of all seamlessly work. But I really appreciate that. But so after the acquired or acquisition, I should say.
Oh man, no, this was life changing.
Was this
exit? It was not a move. There are certain exits that are like fire sales or something, or acqui-hires. It was
getting out of the
not
job
that. In fact, we were We were bootstrapped, we were profitable, we were growing. There was no reason for us to sell. So we were approached by 5 different acquirers. And so we had the luxury of having 5 inbound over the course of 18 months or whatever. And Lead Pages was by far the best strategic fit. And Clay Collins, the CEO, I had known him. We'd run in the same circles. I listened to his podcast. He listened to mine. He paid attention to MicroConf. So it just became a natural fit and more of a conversation rather than some like massive company acquiring, this little company. It was more like hey, come work with me. Not come work for me, but come work with me. And we're bringing the team in. We're not going to break anything. We're going to let you guys be autonomous and as autonomous as you can let someone be when you're 10xing their growth every so many months. We need help. But no, so it's been good. The team was given a choice to move or not move, but everyone kept their job. And so about half the team wound up moving to Minneapolis here, including myself. Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on all that, and I absolutely love it. And I think you're probably. I would ask where you're going, where you're seeing yourself the next level up, but I'll give you some time for that. Mm-hmm. But I guess looking back, where would you say some of the major lessons that you saw along that journey? I mean, obviously you did. I can kind of just see all those different levels up.
Looking back, it's funny. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. Where do you see those key lessons along the way? The book and the blog and the podcast and stuff. Hundreds and hundreds. There's tens of thousands overall, but like I've had one-on-one conversations with more than 1,000, and I'm seeing this pattern of people starting small and then stair-stepping their way up. So starting with a lot like I did. These days, though, it's like WordPress plugins or Magento add-ons, or maybe it's an ebook, and basically, starting with this like a single source of traffic and learning how to do SEO or learning how to do paid ads, and then leveling up, and you either sell that one or you build on top of it, kind of like I did, and then eventually moving into SaaS, because SaaS is it's so damn competitive these days. But you need. And if you can get some experience, if you can get some, expertise, if you can get a little bit of money behind you, if you can get confidence, you build it up in these smaller niches where it's not such red water, and then kind of level that up. Because if I had tried to do drip 5 years earlier, I don't know if it would have worked. Like I may have completely tanked. It was this unique confluence of all this experience and the money that I had from Hittail that was backing it, and the audience and the network, which I didn't have 6 years prior. So it's just a bunch of stuff over time. I think stair stepping up is kind of what I would recommend to folks getting started. And the other thing I think is pay attention to your not even your network. It's just like do stuff in public early, like launch something, because the sooner you get your name out, the sooner people start knowing who you are, and the sooner you can kind of build those competitive advantages that I talked about. Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love that. And, I think you've done an incredible job. I can't believe in 18 months you did so much stuff. Like I've seen all the stuff you put out. That's a lot. I mean, you must have been really busy during that time, but it worked out really well for
I
you.
I was marketing most of them. The book was the one thing that took off. I did the big launch. I was going to write the book if I forget what my goal was, like $8,000 in sales for the book. And I was like, all right, then I'll launch it. Then I'll launch it. And I did. I got a pre-launch list of 500 people. And I was like, I'll do the math. I'm sure it'll work. And, launched it and sold, this 2010 probably, sold 10 or 12,000 bucks. I was super happy. And then next month it sold $3 or $4 grand. And then next month it sold 3 or 4. And so I've sold, 12,000 copies self-published. It's done $300,000 in revenue or something. It was way beyond what I expected. The others, we had to market pretty hard. Like launching a conference is really hard. Launching Founder Cafe, which is the membership site, was hard. Appreciate it.
That's fantastic, man. You've done some incredible things, and keep going. I know you're going to have something next to level up to, man. That's fantastic. But I'm going to stop there for a second, and I'm going to quickly ask, guys, people on the call, does anyone have any questions for Rob? Anything specifically? It can be about SaaS, it can be outside of it. What are you guys doing to kind of up-level yourself right now in your business? Are you guys on a upward trajectory? Are you looking at leveling up? And any kind of questions for Rob? And, one of the things I would love to do today, guys, if you do have questions, we can turn on your microphone. You can ask them live. Otherwise, if there are no questions today, Rob, I would just love to kind of hear from you. Like, I always like to ask this to people, and especially it's kind of interesting because you're in such a unique position. But a lot of people, when I ask them this question, it's kind of a unique answer. Knowing what you know
it was
now
tough.
and
It was a
kind
lot of
of the
work.
red water that you were in with Drip, looking back now, would you
since
start Drip again?
Since it worked out the way it did, yes, right. I mean, it's the Cinderella exit. So yeah, I would. I don't know if I would do it again now, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I were to, I don't know. I've told my wife I'm not doing anymore. Like, I'm done. I'm not going to launch another SaaS app. It's just too much work. Yeah, maybe I'll acquire something, but like the product market fit, the 18 months to getting there, I'm over it. I've been there, done that. So it's a fun experience if you're doing it, I think, for the first time, but it's fun and stressful. But yeah, I don't think I have it in me anymore, you know? So. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
I feel like the one journey, most people have like one good journey. And then it's just like there's a little bit of burnout that you kind of face in the interim there.
For sure.
Karen said, great advice to take pride in being small, get moving forward and growing into new directions. Thanks for encouragement and advice. And Karen, absolutely. I just want to say, one of the things that I know about Karen is that she does, she's used Demio a lot as far as launching a conference and really just attacking it at its core. And
totally. And it's okay to start small and not level up too. I mean, just because I did it, I got bored. I actually didn't want to level up each time. I was like, no, it's going to be stressful. I'm going to have to work a bunch. But eventually I got bored and needed to do that. I have friends who make, full-time livings with 2 or 3 WordPress plugins. They don't have the desire to level up. Man, power to them. I wish that I had the calm, the inner peace to not be restless every 1 to 2 years and need to change everything up. So there's a lot of value, I think, in being small. Totally. Yep. About every 6 to 12 months, I go on a retreat. A little bit of that challenge, kind of like it used to be to the coast when I was in California. Anyways, I go to a retreat just on my own for 2 days, and I just think through all this stuff and think, what do I want to do next, and how hard is it going to be, but what's the right choice, Yes. Yep. So I did. That's awesome. I did the early stage stuff when I had 1 kid, and then all the SaaS was with 2 kids. The thing is try to get to the point, or as soon as you can, where you can buy out your time so that you're not doing this on the side. You're gonna have. I mean, I did it for years on the side, and you're gonna have to do that. I just drank a lot of caffeine and did what I could. To be honest, I had a full-time job in, I think it was 2005, and at lunch I would grab my laptop, I'd go out to my car, and I would work. And it was such a nerdy thing to do, but I was trying to build a business, and I needed every spare minute during the day. But as soon as you have enough revenue where you don't need that day job, suddenly it's like poof. You go from working 40 hours a day job plus 20 on the side to where it's like, boy, I have all the time I need as soon as you're in control. So you got to try to get there as soon as you can. Cut expenses. I mean, again, I made way less from products than I did from consulting, but it didn't matter. I just wanted to buy my time out.
I love that. Jose said you have done e-commerce and SaaS and being successful at both.
I don't. Yeah, I wouldn't tackle. I mean, two-sided marketplaces are so hard. If I were ambitious enough to do that, I would just raise funding. I'm not. I may bootstrap, but I'm not anti-funding. I just am anti everyone thinking that you need to raise funding to do anything. You can launch a profitable business without it, and then funding is often the catalyst or the gasoline you add to grow faster. If we had not been acquired by Lead Pages, we were talking very serious about raising $250,000, $500,000 round, because it was right at the point where we needed money to accelerate growth. Money was holding us back. So anyways, that's my stance on funding.
I love that. That's really great advice. And you also put yourself in a really good position to have a deal or an investor that fits in your business culture and your business and sees a long-term vision versus kind of like if we don't get funding right now, we're going to die kind of phase where you already have product market fit, you have a product that's working. So
if you're going to go bigger,
Corey said you've
I
done
wouldn't
single
have wanted
founder
to do
and
that
double
alone.
founder.
So I really
Doing
liked
both.
having
Which
a
do you
co-founder,
prefer
and we get
now?
along well, and we built a product that was 10x better than if either of us had built it individually. Staying small, I mean, when I was doing really small kind of lifestyle stuff, I'd prefer to do that on my own, because then there's no, you don't have anybody that you're worried about. Maybe I'm not working enough. When I was working 10 hours a week, like if I'd had a co-founder, that would have been weird. So it's like, if I'm going to go all in on something, I want a co-founder. If I'm not, I want to be on my own. Info products and such, I want to be on my own. Yeah. Mm, yeah. So I mean, the honest part,
And Karen has another question.
in any marketplace,
where
you're
did
going
you
to
guys,
find
especially your early
dishonest
contractors,
people, right? Or people that
find good
are
affordable
unethical or
programmers
whatever.
who
So
are
that's just
polished?
something you have to seek out and interview out. I found a lot of our early contractors on Upwork. It used to be called Odesk. These days, I recommend people, if you're not technical, go to toptal.com. There's a couple competitors to it. It's toptal.com. It's more expensive, but that's the price you pay for not being able to kind of do the assessment of their technical skills. But once we had enough budget to hire, then of course we hired local, and you can look people eye to eye and such. So, yep.
That's awesome. And another thing
Mm-hmm.
that I would say is one thing
Yep.
that we've also done before is you can hire people on Upwork that are really expensive, that have a very high level of programming, like senior programmers. Hire them to run some technical not technical due diligence, but technical testing on maybe people that fit in your budget range. So you can even have technical tests.
I would also encourage you,
They
if
can
you are
judge
not
them.
a
You might
software
spend 50,
developer,
100
think
bucks on these
twice about
people, but
going
it really
into
helps you kind of
software. There's
solve
plenty of money to be
gap
made by
between your
building
technical
info
knowledge.
products, or by using off-the-shelf products and cobbling them together. If you're building a WordPress plugin or a one-time sale, a download, okay, that's simple stuff. It would be I would be remiss if I didn't discourage a non-technical person from trying to start a SaaS app these days. It is just, you have all the things against you. I know it can be done. I'm not saying it's impossible. Uphill, yeah. Be, sure.
I want to get into this.
Because the core competency of a SaaS app is technology.
Why do you think it's so uphill?
All of it, like keeping it up, knowing how to maintain it, knowing how to scale it, knowing building good code coverage, good test coverage. Like that is the core of everything. And even if you know how to market and support and do sales and all this other stuff, if that technology is not like super solid, then long term it is very hard. I've seen many companies do complete rewrites of their product because actually I can't name them, but I could name them off the top of my head, but I don't want to, because the founders, you don't have budget in the early days, so you hire somebody and you tend to hire someone less expensive because you don't have the money. Over and over, I've seen this pattern. So again, these are surmountable things. It's just, there are other ways to do it. If you have more budget, you can hire better people, or if you can code, or you find a technical co-founder. I just think it's so much easier. Even with Drip, I haven't written a line of code on Drip. I don't know Rails. It's built in Ruby on Rails. But that didn't matter. One, I had a contractor, Derek, who later became co-founder, who was technical, highly technical, and I trusted him. And I know enough to know if developers are blowing smoke because I've done it for long enough, So yeah, it's tough. It's a tough balance. Mm-hmm. There you go.
100%. And I think you did mention, if you have, like you had initially when you kind of started, some money in the bank, some extra funding to hire maybe a CTO that would work. But again, maybe that might be the time that you're looking at funding or having something in the bank to give you some a new leg up, because it is extremely challenging. I can tell you guys, it is extremely challenging not being a technical founder in all of this. But you can definitely do it. But I think you're absolutely right. It is a little bit more challenging there. But cool. Well, Rob, I just want to really, thank you and acknowledge you for coming on the call, man. Really appreciate your time. I know you took some good time out of your day to sit with us. So really thank you so much. And we all wish you the very best. Guys, any last questions before we head off? Otherwise, I think we're good to go. Cool. Well, Rob, like I said, I really appreciate it, man, and definitely going to stay in touch. You guys rock. We absolutely love your product. You guys have done an amazing
Yeah,
job. So
thanks, man. I
keep it
appreciate
up,
it. You
keep
guys are doing
going,
great over there at
and
Demio too.
I'm
Keep it
excited
up.
to see what your next level up is as a non-SaaS,
Bye.
I guess, founder in the future. Really appreciate it, man. All right, Rob. Talk to you soon.